Lord will not be dismayed. Those who trust in the Lord will never be shaken. Those who wait for the Lord will mount up with new strength. All who call on His name will be saved.
I'm not a religious guy, and I don't have a whole bunch of religious rules telling you what you ought to do with your life. And it's good that I don't. It wouldn't be good for you to hear that sort of stuff. Even if you obeyed it all, you'd just be doing what somebody else said you should do. And that's not what a relationship with God is all about. What I can and hope to be able to do each week is help you to see the big picture. Because Jesus is always painting pictures. He's giving us parables. And if you can get the big picture, not just in your head, but mostly get the picture in your heart, then you'll know what to do. Then step by step, day after day, the Lord will show you how to live, and you'll enjoy the blessings that come with that. But it's getting the picture. And here in Luke 15 and 16, we have a pair of parables set side by side, two different contrasting pictures. And the first one is a picture of family wealth. We often call that story the story of the prodigal son, but it's much more than just the story of the prodigal son. It's a picture of family wealth. It's a picture of the true economy, the everlasting economy. And then chapter 16 that we started to look at last week, it's a picture of worldly wealth. It's a picture of our current economy. One that we deal with every day, but it helps you to deal with it if you know just about how significant it is. The current economy versus the everlasting economy. So we'll look at chapter 16. Like I said last week, this first parable in chapter 16 is often confusing to folks. And we went through it a bit last week, but I kept looking at that clock, and the battery's just as dead this week as it was last week. And so, it was very obvious, look, we're not going to have the time, so we're going to go back over a little bit, look at it a little more closely. But before we read that parable that starts chapter 16, let's have the words of the Father from the story of the prodigal son. Let's just have those words echoing in our heart as we then move into the next section. So from that parable, chapter 15, last couple of verses, here's what the Father said. And if you remember the story, so much the better, but we're not going to go back over it again. Here's the final words of the Father in this story. He said, verse 31, and he said this to the older son. Getting older doesn't mean you're getting wiser. In fact, it might just be you're getting old. It might just be you're getting hard, and instead of growing up, you're just growing old. And sadly, the older son was in a bad place, but the Father is still as good as he ever is. And here's the words of the Father, verse 31, "My child, you have always been with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we have to be merry. We have to rejoice because this brother of yours was dead, and he's begun to live. He was lost, and he has been found. Now, and Jesus was also saying this to the disciples. He said there was a certain rich man who had a steward, and his steward was reported to him as squandering, wasting all of his possessions." You see, this second parable is a contrast to the one we just had. Here, the head of the household, so to speak, is a rich man. In the previous passage, the father was the head of the household. And the father was the head not because he had the most money. We don't know how rich the father was, except when you see what true wealth is about, you see the father was really wealthy. And how blessed those sons were to have a father like that. How wealthy we are, how blessed we are to have a father like that. But there's no word about how rich the dad is in the previous story. He was the head of the family by virtue of the heavenly birth. By virtue of the offspring, not of money, but of love. And when I say the heavenly birth, I'm not just talking about the biological birth, because even animals can birth babies. We're not talking just the first birth, the biological birth. We're talking about the heavenly birth, which is the offspring of love. It's where love begets something, and then that which is beget is is free to do what they will. But if they will to return and love in return, now you got something that's real. And it goes on. It's the love of family. It's the love of offspring that comes because you've loved. It's true parentage. When Paul refers to Timothy as my true son in the faith, it's not who you have biologically, not who shares your DNA, but where the love is shared. That's real family. That's real wealth. That's true parentage. And so the father is the head of the household because of that in the first story, chapter 15. But here in this story, the guy is the head because he's got the most money. He's the rich man. He's head of that economy by virtue of the fact that I pull all the strings. I own everyone. Everyone's indebted to me. Whatever you got, it actually belongs to me, and you owe me one. And he's the head of the house, kind of like the old banking houses of Europe. So much of our banking began with what was called houses, the House of Rothschilds or the House of Medici or Goldman Sachs or some of these that still are banks today, but they were begun by families. And pretty soon it wasn't a family, it was just a business, and it was all about money, but like our current economy. And by the way, I'm not putting down the current economy. It is what it is. I'm not saying, oh, that evil stuff. I'm not going to stand here and be a hypocrite and talk about the evils of money when I would be very glad if you'd give me more of yours. So, I mean, we're all human, okay? Money is what it is. Let's not be self-righteous about this, but it is only what it is. And it's just money. And this guy's the head of the household because he has the most money. He's the one who owns everything. He's the rich man, and so it's a house, but it's not a home. It's as cold as gold. It's just not all that meaningful if you really in your heart hold to true meanings. It's not all that meaningful. Now, in the previous story, there were sons involved, and the sons were sons by virtue not just of biological, but again, love is manifest throughout that whole picture of the prodigal son. And the sons of the previous parable are now standing in contrast here with a steward. A steward is just a hireling. A steward is somebody who's subservient to the head, but it's all about money. It's all about being second, and there's always strings attached. And really that word steward is where we get our word economy. And it's just talking about someone who manages the house, manages the household. It's somebody who has a job, maybe a very important, powerful job, but there's no real belonging. You belong to the house of because you work there, but you're not really part of the home because there's no connection of love. He doesn't really belong there. So here's the steward before there was the son. And both of them did one thing the same. They both squandered. It says there was a certain rich man who had a steward, and this steward was reported to him as squandering his possessions. And it's the same word. The prodigal son squandered his father's wealth, or squandered the wealth that was given to him. And now this steward squanders his boss's wealth. So squandering's the same in both. I hope you can hang with me, because after the pictures get painted, all of the applications will then begin to flow in your heart. Not because I'm going to tell you, but they will because you got the picture. But, trying to paint pictures with words here, But Jesus said, come to me and I will give you rest. So if you do nothing more than rest here today, you've done pretty well. But you'll rest even when you leave here, if you get the big picture. Here's a steward who squandered. Here's a son who squandered. Big difference is the son squandered something that belonged to him. Even though it was money, it was his half of the inheritance, and the father said, here, if you think that's what the family wealth is, if that's all you want, you can have it all. And he goes out and he wastes all of his own money. That may be painful, because you know what? That was your money. If money's what it's all about. Now, of course, we already looked at that story. When that kid comes back, he realizes, man, even though I threw away all my money, I am still a rich person because my father loves me. There's the wealth of the family. That's the wonderful story. But it was his money, okay? And his pain because I wasted it all. The difference here is that the steward is wasting someone else's money. This is my boss's money. I'm squandering something that never, Everything he touches is never really his. That's part of the economy. Everything belongs to someone else. I'm playing the game. I'm working within it. But what's really mine? What really belongs to me? So the son throws away his own. The steward here squanders what belongs to his boss. When the father gave to the son, no strings attached. My child, I love you. All these words are implied. It's not in the story, but basically, when the prodigal son comes and says, give me the money, the father says, here's your half of the money. I love you. Go ahead and go. No strings attached. Not you owe me one. I'm giving you something. And when the son comes back, it's not like, how dare you? No strings attached. You got what was yours. You wasted what's yours. But here's something that's you can't lose. I love you. I care for you. But when it comes to this steward, oh man, just based, this head of the household, unlike the father, this head of the household, when he hears, doesn't even know for sure. He just gets the rumor that my money manager is mismanaging my money. You're fired. You are out of here. Lots of strings attached. In fact, there might be one around your neck and we'll hang you because we're dealing with money here. And you messed with my money. And that's the contrasting pictures. The father waits in love. The boss just says, you're fired, man. Business, dealings are over. And it says in verse 2 that the head of the house, the rich man, called him in and said to him, what's this I hear about you? Give an account of your stewardship, for you can no longer be steward. It's over. You're fired. The father waits in love. The boss, just because it's all about money, says, okay, you messed up with the money. And so the rich man fires his steward, even though, by contrast, the love of the father lasts forever. Well, as we saw, the steward now figures, man, I'm out of a job. I'm in big trouble now. What in the world am I going to do? And it says the steward said to himself, what am I going to do? My master, he's fired me. He took away the house managing job away from me, and I'm not strong enough to dig, and I'm ashamed to beg. I know what I'll do. Here's what I'll do so that when I get fired and when I'm out of my job, so that people will take me into their homes, I've got an idea. Both the steward right here and the son in the previous picture, each of them have their aha moment. For the prodigal son, he came to his senses. Each of these guys are in my life just stinks right now. One says, man, I'm out of a job and I don't want to beg. I'm too proud to do that. I don't want to work. He has his aha moment. The son had his. The son came to his senses, and for the son, it was like, well, wait a minute here. I'm starving. My father's house. And really, in a sense, each of them had a scheme, because we tend to do that. We think the only way I can work out this mess is I got to work out something. And the prodigal son, he has this scheme. He says, you know what? I'm going to go back to the father because even the slaves have food to eat, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to say, and I believe he meant it, that I'm not even worthy to be called your son. Let me just be a slave and let me at least have some food for being a slave. That was his scheme, but that story, it was not necessary. Because when the father received him, it wasn't, okay, come and be my slave because you messed up taking all my money. It was like, look, you owe me nothing. I love you always. Come back into my home. There was just that warm embrace. The scheme was not necessary. We don't get back to the love of the Father by schemes or by religion or by anything else we can do. The love is just there waiting for us to wake up. Here with this guy, his scheme is, well, you know what? I'm going to be out of a job, but I'd like to have some people who will take me in. So with his little aha moment, he says, I know what I'll do, and here's how it plays out. It says, verse 5, he summoned each one of his master's debtors. Again, none of these people are indebted to him, but now he's going to make them indebted to him. You just play the shell game. It's the way the whole scheme works. And he began saying to the first of them, how much do you owe my master? And he said, well, I owe him 100 measures of oil. He said, take your bill, sit down quickly, and write down 50 instead. Then he went to another, said, how much do you owe? He said, well, I owe him 100 measures of wheat. He said, well, okay, take your bill and write 80. And, without making the story extra long, Jesus already said he did this with all of them. But here's a couple of examples. He just went around, and as I pointed out last week, the way I see this whole thing, everyone in the whole story is crooked. And it actually fits the picture better. I'm not going to defend the actions of anybody. In fact, in this present world, we all mess up. We all fail. We all fall short. Some far worse than others, and certainly in terms of the justice of this world, some ought to be in jail. But in terms of this picture, this story, this current economy, the way things work in this world, I think everybody's crooked here. Some more so than others. But each being a little bit bent then bends the rules to their own way. You see, you have to understand, I don't know if I pointed this out last week, you have to understand that for Jews, because of the law, they were not allowed to charge interest to one another. Now, you could just stick it to the Gentiles, but you never do that to a brother, a fellow Jew. You can lend them money, but you cannot charge interest. And for devout Muslims, it's the same thing. And for some devout Christians, based upon the Old Testament law, they say you should never charge interest. But those who are devout Jews, Muslims, and devout Christians always find ways to bend the rules. And really, the whole history of banking, it's a fascinating history. And in fact, in the Middle East, in the Islamic world, the way they do it, you do it, but not technically. I'm not really charging interest, but you play this game, and in effect, you're basically doing it. But that's just what happens. It's human nature. When you're a little bit bent, you're always doing a little bit of bending. And that's kind of what Jesus was dealing with all the time with these Pharisees and self-righteous people. They had all these ways in which they would strain out the gnat and swallow the camel. And again, that's just, until you deal with the bentness inside of the heart, you're always going to bend the rules somewhere out there. And only God can make you really straight, up and up, through and through in the heart. And it's a process. It's a work within. But again, this is just human nature. It's not throwing stones at anyone. It's just kind of the way we are. And the fact that, some of this is being reduced, maybe it has something to do with some of the interest. The fact that the boss is understanding, the guy doesn't get his job back, but the rich man says, wow, what you did is pretty amazing, and it seems the boss was doing some things that shouldn't have been done. But again, that's not the point. Again, it's never like, well, they're bad and I'm good. It's God is good. He's our Father. That's always the message. The good news is He so loved the world, He gave His only begotten Son. And when the apostles say things like, love not the world, nor the things in the world, when they say, friendship with this world is hostility toward God. Whoever makes himself a friend of the world is an enemy toward God. You've heard those verses. When they say things like that, the explanation is right in the context. It says, love not the world nor the things of the world, for all that is in the world is the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the boastful pride of life. And those things are not from the Father, they're from the world. You see, it's not about the people of the world, it's about the passions of the world. It's the ways of the world. It's the ways in which it's all about, I want it, I want it, I want it. It's not love, it's lust. It's I want it, I want it. It's just the world. It's part of the way that we are. Now there's much more. That's the wonderful thing. There's much more than money. There's much more than just, I want it, lust, boast, pride, all that sort of stuff. And so, you got to understand that. It's the source, what's moving you. It'll keep you from being self-righteous. It'll help you to be truly right. It's not speaking against the people of the world, for God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that we could all be His friends. But it's not through the economy of this world. It's not through buying and paying and leveraging and indebting. Certainly not that way. So much of religion is all about that. Part of Martin Luther's whole protest was the way in which religion was being used to build buildings and make things happen. And again, that's just human nature. It's not one denomination versus another. It's just a problem we all tend to have. But God, the Father, has given us a whole new economy, an everlasting economy that we can deal in. Not wheel and deal, but really deal in every day. That's the good news. You got a picture of a heavenly economy there in the story of the prodigal son, a source of wealth, the Father's love that never ends, lasts forever. Enter in. Enter in. The older son, the prideful son, not entering in. I've worked like a slave. You didn't give me what's owed. That's self-infliction of punishment. You don't want the dancing, you don't want the joy, you don't want to come into the house. But remember those words of the Father at the very end. Those words are everlasting words. What I have is yours. You've been with me up till now. Well, don't you want to be with me? This is your brother. But those are the pictures being put forth here. We're talking about two contrasting economies. And again, our word economy is about a house. It's about the rules of the house. And there's two contrasting economies. If you can get this into your thoughts, again, I think it'll change the way you live if you want to. That's always what it is. If you want to. You don't have to. You can stand outside the house and complain as long as you want. But the good news is the kingdom of heaven is at hand. You can come in. You can get to know your brothers and sisters. You can come in and know the Father's love. But the current economy is based upon lust, and boast. You take those three away, the economy collapses. It cannot run without lust, and boast. Okay. But the everlasting economy is love, and love. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, love, lasts forever. That's the everlasting economy. So the second parable, the one we're looking at right now, that's the current economy. Doesn't sound very exciting, does it? It's all of this crook and another crook. It's a house of cards. Each is leaning on the other. It's consistent because each is leaning on the other. None can stand alone. But as long as lust, and boast are at work, and don't worry, I think they're going to be at work for a while here. As long as they work, it'll work. All the cards will lean against one another, and it'll stand, even though it's built of sand. That's just the picture here in this second parable. And all of those within this current economy, they're consistent. They deal with each other the same way. It's consistent. That's why it holds together. There's a coherence because there's a consistency. And so that's what's going on in verse 8. His master praised the unrighteous steward because he had acted shrewdly. It's like, whoa, I don't get that. There's no repentance. There's no restoration. Dang right, there isn't. There's no repentance, there's no restoration. You know what? There's no relationship. There never was. It was business. And don't think that this guy is now rehired. He's still fired. But the crooked boss is admiring the crooked schemes of his crooked steward, and he says, that's pretty cool. I'm going to put that in my crook book because that's a pretty neat thing that you did, but you're still fired. And the guy who's fired at least knows that now other people know that I've been a crook, and they've got their own crooked houses, and I can slink my way into one of their crooked houses. And there is no happily ever after. This is the current economy. It just keeps going on. There's someone else that owes you one because you did one for them, and you did one to another before someone did one to you, and now you got a place where you can hide out. I've got a place of refuge. I can slink into one of the crooked houses of the people who took my crooked dealings, and it can only last as long as lust, and boast last. This financial house. But that's the way it is. Now here's good news. Here's what can be. Here's the way it ought to be. This is what I want. Jesus comments there at the end of verse 8. He says, the sons of this present age, the offspring of this present economy, they are more shrewd, not wise, just shrewd, more shrewd in their relationship to others who are sons of this present economy. They're much more consistent than the sons of a higher place, the sons of light, the sons of the Father. The people who are just the sons of this present age, they're much more consistent in their economy than the children of the Father are in his economy. Can you get that? Again, people, Jesus, why are you confusing us? Why did you even tell us this parable? You're making it hard on us. No, the best things, the most useful things in life usually come through something that's a little bit difficult to get your heart around. So please try. Jesus is not saying, be a crook, because it pays off. He's just saying that crooks do their crooked things, and they're consistent. They're more consistent in their economy than you folks are being in the economy that the Father offers you. And understand, please don't say, them, us, them. We're all of us. We are in this present economy. Of course we are. You got money in your wallet, you pay tax. We're all part of this. Give to Caesar what belongs. We're all part of that. Don't be self-righteous about it. The good news is that God so loved the world, every one of us can be a part of a much higher economy, starting today. We can be a part of something much more. And Jesus is simply saying, look at the way you play the game in this world. Everyone's consistent with it. If you could learn to be consistent with a much higher economy, how rich you'll be, how blessed you'll be. Happily ever after, for sure. That's what he's saying. He says, in this world, dog eat dog. Okay, that's the way it is. Quit complaining about it. But notice they play to win. And notice that they are consistent in what they do. That's the story so far. We'll get to the, more of like, well, this doesn't help me so far. But here's the question. If you want your wealth to be the Heavenly Father, the everlasting wealth, if you want to be a son of light, if you want to live like a child of God, do it. Whosoever wills. Our Father, thy will be done. There. You don't even have to do an altar call. Just do it right now. Father. And then live it. And live it consistently. And you'll enjoy it daily because the kingdom of heaven is at hand. The kingdom of heaven is right here and right now. Where is your wealth? And what does it mean to win? Those are the questions. In the real economy, where's your wealth? And what does it mean to win? Don't play the games that are bound to collapse, that have to be eclipsed. Where's real wealth? And what does it mean to really win? Jesus said, I say to you, make friends for yourselves by means of the mammon of unrighteousness, or the mammon that has no moral standing. Use that to make friends for yourselves so that when it fails or when that economy is eclipsed, it will be. It has to be eclipsed. When it is, that they may receive you, these friends may receive you into the eternal dwellings, not into the little places where you slink into, one crook supports another. The eternal dwellings, in my Father's house, there are many dwelling places. And it's the relationships you'll have there, they start here because they're based in love. And when he says the mammon of unrighteousness, let's try this again, because even after last week, I tried so hard. I went so long, people still were going, I don't get it. Well, okay. When it says the mammon is just money. Let's start there. Mammon is money. Secondly, money is not righteous. Money doesn't make you right. Money is not righteous, but neither is it evil. It's just money. Money isn't good, money isn't evil, it's amoral. Like it has no morals, it's just money. It's just money. It's not money that's the root of all evil, it's the love of money. Love of something so insignificant. If you love a petty thing, you become a petty person. If you think that's real wealth, you are really poor. Money is just money. So use it. Don't love it. Use it. It's a tool. Let it go. Use it for something really significant, something that really lasts. That's the idea. When Jesus said make friends, he's not saying buy friends, because you can't buy friends. Money can't buy me love. Even the Beatles knew that. Money, you cannot buy friends. Making friends with your money is just as counterfeit as going over to the copy machine with your friends and making money. You can't make friends with your money. You can't make money with your friends. That's counterfeit. Well, but it looks like we got good copy machines today. We got good paper. And they keep upping the ante, better paper because we don't want counterfeit. You know what makes money worth something? And this is kind of weird, but you think about it. In fact, a lot of times you think about this present economy. You look at your watch, you wonder how late you're going. What makes it worth something? It's got to be backed by something of value. It used to be things like gold and silver, whatever that is. I mean, you can't eat gold or silver, but when everyone agreed that gold and silver. But nowadays, it's backed by the full faith and trust of the American government, or something like that, which is underwritten by China and something. In a lot of ways. Have you read about or invested in this Bitcoin deal? Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies. I try to get my head around that. My son told me about it about 3-4 years ago. I said, that's stupid. If I had invested when it was stupid and I was smart enough to sell out now, I'd probably be really wealthy. But you know what? What is this? It's bits, it's little blips. I feel much better about my 401k because I can go to my computer that's all blips and I can see the blips that signify the fact that somebody somewhere, they better have it for me. Although somebody, a hacker from across the world, can come in and take your blips out, and it's like, oh no. So go back to what? You're gonna sleep on a bed full of gold, or real estate? The fact is, the whole system is based upon trust. And it's simply a trust that we'll keep being consistent and doing things like we do it. And that's really what it comes down to. And this present system will last just as long as lust, and boast last. And the good news is, I think for 2018, you can count on lust, and boast to keep on going. So the economy in some way will keep on going, but it's ultimately based upon that. And that's what keeps it spinning. Always has, always will, as long as that can last. The good news is that's not going to last forever. The best news is there's something so much better that you can trust in. The money of this world is backed by trust in the system of this world, but friendship has to be backed by something as well. And it's backed by the trust not in lust, and boast. It's trust in the love of the Father. Not gold or silver, the love of the Father, our Father. The love of the Father is the basis for all wealth. It's the basis for what will really last, because that will last. The banking house of love, and love, the true economy of God, goes on forever and ever. Whenever you make little decisions along that line, you'll find the present economy. There's booms, there's busts, there's bitcoins, there's this thing that's like, it can't last, but I better invest real quick because it's a fascinating history. The history of man with all of its wars and all of its chaos, but the everlasting Father, the real economy you can invest in today. There's no booms, there's no busts, there's no balloons. It's growth because it's love. It's investment, guaranteed return. Not overnight, but everlasting. That's the big picture. That's the wonderful thing. We're offered every day with every decision. How did Jesus invest? I was asking myself that. Now I'm going to ask you. How did Jesus invest in people? How did he make friends? He said to his disciples, I call you friends. How did he invest? He didn't deal much in money, did he? I don't see it. He didn't deal much in money, but he always paid. He paid his taxes, even if he had to, go fishing and pull out a coin, but he always paid. He paid his taxes, he paid his debts, he owed no man. He always gave to each what he ought to give. He paid attention to people. He didn't call for attention. He wasn't, like, I want to be a star. He paid attention. He invested in people with his time and with his heart and with his love. He gave interest. He wasn't collecting interest. He wasn't like, hey, you owe me. It wasn't like, hey, what do I get back because I gave to you? It was not collecting interest. It was not like, I've got 5,000 people who are on my Facebook page. They all love me. I gave them food, and I just made up a little, bread and fish, and now look at how they love me. Look at all the interest I'm getting. Aren't I wonderful? Those kind of things never even seem to stir in the heart of Jesus. It's not about how much interest others have in you. What big deal? How much interest do you have in others? How much attention will you pay to them? Jesus was always investing in that sense. And he never left anybody with a sense of obligation. You owe me one now. Never left anybody with a mortgage, with a debt, with a sense that, well, when I come back, hey, I'm coming again. And I'm going to be collecting. It was always freely you've received, now freely give. No strings attached. I love you. I care for you. I give. That's a good example of maybe what we all ought to learn to do. And then he says, verse 10, he who is faithful in a very little thing is faithful also in a lot. But he who is unrighteous in a very little thing is unrighteous in much. If therefore you've not been faithful in the use of unrighteous money, who's going to entrust the true riches to you? And if you have not been faithful in the use of that which belongs to someone else, who's going to give you what really belongs to you? In those verses, there are three very, very important things to learn about money. In fact, it's funny. Some of the commentaries and books that I've been reading about, going over this section might even be something in your own Bible, the footnotes. It gives a heading for what's going to be talked about. What's Jesus going to talk about now? And some of them say more teachings by Jesus, mostly about money. And I say, it's nothing about money. It's all about people. It's all about love. It's not about money. There are three very important things to learn about money here. The first of them is money is not very important. The first very important thing you can learn about money is not very important. It's just not. Jesus said, he who is faithful in a very little thing. Money is a very little thing. But if you're faithful in a very little thing, well, then you'll learn to be faithful in things that really mean a lot. But the first thing is that money is a very little thing. God, help me to get that into my heart and my mind. Help me to wash my worries through that screed. Money is a very little thing. Secondly, money is comparatively phony. It's fake. It's false. Jesus said, if you've not been faithful in the use of unrighteous mammon or money, the phony stuff, who's going to give you the true stuff, the true riches? Who's going to give you the real gold? If you haven't learned how to use this comparatively phony stuff. And then thirdly, money's not really yours. Now that shouldn't bother you, really. If you can accept the first two, if you can accept the fact that money is a very little thing and it's phony, who cares? If it's not mine, it's just a very little thing. It's a phony thing. It's not mine. So big deal. If you can't get the first two into your heart, then you might have a hard time with the third one, but it's true. Jesus said, if you've not been faithful in the use of what belongs to someone else, Caesar or whoever, it belongs to the system ultimately, who's going to give you what really is yours? So all of that. Conclusion. I think all of you are still awake. Rocky, your head's down. He's awake. Okay. Real quickly, if we can just tie the pictures together and you can take this picture and let the Lord imprint it on your heart, I think he'll tell you what to do with Christmas and everything else in life. It's not making friends, not buying friends. It's investing in the right economy. Investing in the economy. There are two economies set side by side in these two parables. There is the current economy, the current financial house of lust, and boast. And it will continue to hold together as long as we can trust that lust, and boast will be around. And again, I'm not saying sell off all your assets and stuff. I think it's very, very likely that next year lust, and boast will still be in full control of the present system. So as long as that lasts, this current economy will continue to last, and it'll be consistent, it'll cohere, and everyone will do what they do. And okay, we live in this world. Fine. But there's another economy. Not a current economy of lust, and boast, but an everlasting economy of love, and love. And you today, not get in on the bubble, but right now plant the seeds. Today. And it goes on forever and ever. So the three important things about money, money's not that important. Money's a little thing. Love is huge. Love is big. Not like, I gave a little love to a little kid, Like a mustard seed. Love is alive. It grows. Love given years ago you may not even be aware of is growing somewhere, and it'll come back around again. Love is huge. It's never small. Whatever gifts you give, if you give all you got and there's no love, it's nothing. If you give anything and it's in love, that's huge. Love is huge. The money of this current world, it's comparatively phony. Love is genuine. It's the one thing that's real. Love is for sure. It's real. It's true. Wherever you've truly loved, you've truly lived. And thirdly, whatever we work with in this world, it isn't really ours. And at some point, even our bodies, it'll be good to cash them in. But what we have through the love of God, it goes on forever, including new bodies, including new worlds. It goes on and on and on, but it's all based in one thing. It's the love of the Father. And in this present world, it's I lend it to you, you give it back, maybe we'll figure out a way to get a little interest. It's all tied together. It goes on and on and on and on. Love is always let it go. Let it go. You loved it. It's huge. It's true. Let it go. Like the father who says to the son, I love you, and lets him go. And then, of course, the older son who at the end of that story, I can't let it go. Let it go. Love lets go. Love says, freely I've given. Freely you've received. And whenever that love given out freely comes back round, not because you had strings attached, but comes back round of their own free loving will, now that's really yours. Now you got a friend. Now you got family. Now you got something genuine. But you never have anything that's really yours until you really let go of what the Father is giving you all the time. It's freedom from all the games and indebted and you owe me one and why didn't they after all it's freedom from all that bondage. It's the perfect law of liberty. It's love. And man, to think about that, to get that into our hearts, to know, look, and I can even use money, it's just a tool. I can use that to invest, but it's all about that economy. It's all about that truth. And you know what? You're rich. Every one of you is rich because you have a Father who loves you incredibly. Hold on to that. Understand, that's the real wealth. And based upon that, man, what wonderful lives we can live and what a wonderful future we can continue to walk in. Let's turn to him with a closing song.
Those who trust in the Lord will never be shamed. Those who wait